Okay. Hello, social workers, mental health professionals, and change agents. Welcome to another episode of season 4 of the Social Work Branch podcast. I'm your host, Bash Moreno. Saludos a todos. Greetings to everybody. Welcome. However, you're listening or watching this podcast episode, a very special episode. If you heard the podcast a few episodes ago, talking about social work is political, and we have another social worker running for office. Before we get into that, you can follow the podcast on Instagram at the Social Work Rants Podcast. That's all one word. Look, follow the podcast on Twitter at Social Work Rants. Hit the like button on Facebook. Just type in the Social Work Rants Podcast on Facebook, aka Meta. And also hit the red subscribe button on YouTube. Just type in the Social Work Rants Podcast. Hit the subscribe button so you could listen to the podcast on all audio platforms or watch the podcast on YouTube. My guest at this time is Mr. Stephen Valentine, MSW. He is running for public office in North Carolina, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. Yes, North Carolina's 4th Congressional District.
Awesome. Running for Congress. So MSW running for Congress. We need some fresh faces because I know for myself, I'm speaking for myself. I'm tired of these old folks. I'm not trying to do ages because I love the geriatric population, but
yes.
I'm tired of seeing Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer that have been there for 1,000 years, and we doing the same thing, and we need some fresh faces, Republican or Democrat. We just need some fresh voices, fresh faces, tired of doing the same thing over and over again. And what better way than a social worker running for office in North Carolina, which has been a hot, big battle state in these last several general elections. So, Mr. Valentine, welcome aboard.
Hey, thank you so much. And I'm glad that you added some commentary about the tenure of our current legislators. And one of the platforms that I'm running on is actually term limiting myself. I think that, the amount of time that people are spending office, 30 years at a time is denying, younger generations the opportunity to lead. And it's also leading to the status quo. So it is time for some change. Not that we don't love Nancy Pelosi, because we do, but it's definitely some time for change.
No, I'm not absolutely. Whether you're one political spectrum or the other, or you can't stand either one, it's looking for some common ground in the middle. Like we just need some fresh voices. So before we get into the whole political spiel and your campaign, which is fastly coming up, let people know who you are. How how you got into getting your MSW, and just a little background about yourself.
Yeah, so again, my name is Stephen J. Valentine. That's actually how it appears on the ballot, Mr. Moreno.
Okay.
And I live here in Durham, North Carolina. I actually came to Durham because my wife and I, when we were stationed at Fort Bragg, more so my wife would come up to this area to go shopping and looking around. And so when we left the military, my wife liked this area so much that we made Durham our home. And the reason we made Durham our home is because it reminded us a lot of the small town that we grew up in Pennsylvania. We grew up in a small town called Pottstown, Pennsylvania. And Durham has sort of that small town feel, although it's much larger than Pottstown, Pennsylvania, which goes 5 miles in every direction.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's sort of how I got to Durham. But with respect to me getting to my MSW and getting involved in social work, I actually started my social work career as a child protective service worker in the state of Connecticut, actually, after I graduated from Morehouse College. And so after spending some time as a protective service worker, I decided to get my MSW. And so I was looking around for some opportunities, and one became available at the University of Pennsylvania. And so I spent 2 great years there learning our craft. And then I actually entered active service. I had been in a Army reservist already, but I entered actually on active duty as a social work officer. Not many people know that there are social workers who are actually part of the armed forces. So I was a social worker. They're known as behavioral science officers in the Army. And I actually rose through the ranks and became a chief of social work. And so we work closely with the state entity that has some concurrent jurisdiction on military bases. And so I had an opportunity to work in forensic social work, mental health extensively. And so I had great experiences. I also had some experiences in juvenile justice as well. And after I left the service, I also got into social work education. And so I actually spent 5 years, just under 6 years, teaching on the faculty at North Carolina Central University. And so I returned to the university, and I guess part of my story is I also went back and got my law degree, actually at North Carolina Central University. And so it wasn't a coincidence that I ended up back there. And so the blend of social work and the law has been good professionally.
Yeah, I could see that, and it's very similar mirrors. Like you got a little something about the law, especially if you're working in child welfare. Obviously learn family law, and
Yes.
each state, each jurisdiction is different in terms of caring for families and for kids, for reunifications or
Yes.
adoptions. So it's funny because that's how I got into the field myself and got my MSW. Like I've seen these supervisors with the MSWs, like, or people getting promoted because they got their MSWs. Like,
Yes.
okay, I guess that's my next step. So.
Yeah. Yes.
I like in Durham. Now I went to go visit Duke last year during Memorial Day weekend, and I mean, you need a car just to go to class. The campus is so big. So I spent some time in Raleigh for that weekend, and I was like, I'm so close to Duke University. I gotta go and be on the campus as a huge Duke fan. So I went. So it's definitely a beautiful city. The whole area.
Well, next time you're in Durham, Moreno, you call Valentine.
All right.
He'll take you to the other university that's in Durham, North Carolina Central University.
Okay, definitely be open to that. So,
yes.
So what is going on in the district you're running for? What are the issues? What are you seeing? What are you running on?
Well, before I talk about what I'm running on, let me just tell you what the state of affairs here are. There's been an incumbent in this seat for 35, 36 years, and he announced his retirement in December. And so, I mean, quite frankly, after 1/6/2021, I was all in, no matter what. Patriotism. I've heard you speak on your podcast about how patriotism is being turned upside down, and I agree 100%. And so I wanted to be a part of, redirecting this ship with regards to American principles and values. And so that was one of the reasons that I jumped in. But there's 7 people running for the Democratic primary. And oh, by the way, the district's lines in this congressional district were just solidified 4 weeks ago. I mean, the district looked completely different. 4 or 5 weeks ago, looked quite different than it does today. And so all the candidates in this race, quite frankly, are scrambling to get their message out in parts of the state, neighboring counties that never were part of this district before. And so, it is the wild, wild west right now. But I think that the stakes couldn't be higher in this congressional election. I think people in our district have a choice between the status quo, and you've already talked about what the status quo looks like, right? And so we have a chance to turn that around. I think people can choose a different course for the North Carolina's 4th Congressional District in which I reside. And so just to tell you a little bit about me, if I could, with regards to what makes me different than other candidates in this race.
Absolutely.
So I think what makes me stand out is I'm the only candidate in the race who's actually served our country in the military.
And thank you for your service.
Oh man, I would do it all over again. And so two combat tours, one in Iraq and the other in another part of the Middle East as part of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. Actually, the first iteration, the first thing out the door in 2003, when I served in Iraq, I actually was awarded the Bronze Star Medal as a social worker. Yeah, as a social worker for my work with people. And so I'm very proud of that. And so I'm the only one who actually has some national security experience. I'm also the only candidate with real international policy experience. And so I worked as a foreign affairs officer with the U.S. State Department during the first term of President Barack Obama. You might have heard about him.
Yes. I was just watching the episode of Blackish from Mrs. Obama was on it. So
yes. And
I miss him.
yes, we all do. Yes, we all do. And Moreno, I'm also the only candidate who has worked as a social worker and a social work educator, working on the problems facing individuals, families, and communities. You know, problems that you're familiar with, like mental health problems in communities, suicide, sexual assault. And so those things I know firsthand from the work that I've been engaged in. And so I'm also the only candidate in this race who has any experience with the law. I've actually served as a special assistant United States attorney in the District of Columbia, which is basically a trial lawyer. And so presently I'm working as the director of the vet law clinic at North Carolina Central School of Law. And if you know anything about veterans law, you'll know that, you know, a lot of what you do in social work is involved in ensuring that our veterans get the care that they need, as well as the benefits that they're entitled to in the VA system.
Right, so, absolutely.
And so what I'm running on is prioritizing people. That's sort of my campaign slogan. I'm looking to prioritize the needs of people over partisan politics, quite frankly. And so I'm going to draw on some of the experiences that I've talked about, but more importantly, I'm going to reach out and draw on the experiences of people who will be my constituents, right? Their story. You know, in social work, we like to say that people are the experts of their own experience, yes. Right? And there is truth to that. There is truth to that. You know, life is a lived experience. And so I'll draw on some of the experiences of our constituents here. And together, I think the number one priority is going to be protect our democracy. I think you would agree with that, and also the right to vote. And so that's what makes this country special and different than other places around the world, that we are a self-governing people. But I think, quite frankly, our democracy is in peril right now and under attack from domestic, foreign and domestic.
I would say more domestic.
Yes,
you can make a strong argument it's coming from more domestic than international.
I would venture to guess that you're accurate on that point. Yes,
but you had a strong point, and I know mainstream media has talked about this some, but the importance of you just saying that the districts has just been aligned, for 4 weeks ago, like, so all of you are scrambling to figure out, who these people are, or how to get my message across, like,
right,
and realigning these districts, people tend to miss like the underserved, communities, and doing these realignments to prevent people from actually coming to vote, or make things harder for people to vote, or not, ballot boxes being like miles away to a point that somebody can't get to a ballot. Tell me more about that, like why they decide to do this realignment.
So as you are are probably already aware, every 10 years there's a census.
Right.
Constitution mandates that we do a census, and the party in power gets to decide what the lines look like. And so the district lines were drawn by the Republican state house here, and the Democratic Party, as well as others, challenged the lines as drawn in court. And so the district lines have been the subject of litigation for months, going from one forum to the next. And then finally, the Supreme Court of North Carolina actually stepped in and didn't accept any of the proposed maps, and drafted the map that we currently are running under in the 4th Congressional District.
Mm.
And so the legislature didn't actually even right the wrong with regards to gerrymandering. The court stepped in and created what they thought was the fairest map that could be drawn. And so here we are today. But the Republican legislature here is busy. And so a number of years ago, when the Supreme Court gutted the provisions of the 1964 Civil Rights Bill, one of which then deals with the provisions of pre-clearance. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but
No.
So the states in which most of the southern states were under this pre-clearance, which meant that if they had a change to their voting laws, that they'd have to clear it through the federal government before they could institute it. And so when the Supreme Court said that provision of the Civil Rights Act was unconstitutional and no longer needed because things had changed in our society, that's when the Republican legislatures around the country began to assault, quite frankly, the rights of American citizens around voting, just creating every avenue and every trick to prevent people from having access to the ballot. And throughout the South, you saw these ID laws come up in many places. And so that's just one attempt that they're making, or getting rid of voters off the voter rolls, which was another sort of tactic. But I'm in the fight. I mean, there's several bills right now currently being contested. The John Lewis bill, and also the People's, what is it called? John Lewis, the John Lewis Act, and then there's also For the People Act. That's what it's called, the For the People Act, that are fighting to put some of those provisions back in place. So that people can have unfettered access to the ballot. And so that's sort of what's been going on here in North Carolina.
All right. What the 4th district? What cities or towns are represented in the district that you're, or the seat you're trying to win?
So the 4th Congressional District is made up of Durham County, all of Orange County, all of Alamance County, all of Person County, and all of Granville County, or at least 3/4 of Granville County, and then a small precinct in Coswell County. Okay. Makes up the new 4th Congressional District. Yes.
Okay. For my international listeners listening and learning about the U.S. politics, and be like, watch out! What are you guys doing?
Yeah.
So see, this is the stuff we Americans have been going through for a long time, and still dealing with it. And now I'm familiar with the John Lewis Act that's Congress is trying to pass currently, and so being held up and for the vote, and not only by Republicans but a couple of quote unquote Democrats.
Unfortunately, that is the case. Yes.
So I mean that's why you mentioned there's a lot to unpack. You're talking about voting. There's also the census that unfortunately a lot of people do take for granted. And I know where I'm from in the Bronx, in the South Bronx, in my district, we lost a congressional seat because people didn't vote in the census, and they also did some realigning too, that mixing affluent neighborhood mixing with my neighborhood, so like the numbers kind of look better than they really do. So
Right. Right.
and it's all that, which is why we got social workers now trying to run, because we know about these issues that need to be addressed. And you got somebody that's been in Congress for 30 something years,
Yes.
and it's time for people to go. Like, see, we can't do the status quo anymore. Something has to. So I think that was part of the appeal of, at least the first time around, of why Trump ran and won, because he wasn't the status quo, and like, we need somebody different. And a lot of people, unfortunately, don't like Mrs. Clinton, or just Clinton name. See, hear Clinton, people just like don't want to hear it. Uh, so even though she just had all the experience, like, I was like shocked that he won,
Yes.
but I could kind of see like why. It's just not the status quo, and we kind of survived the 4 years, and hopefully, I'm hoping, like, for me, I said it past podcasts, he better be arrested, because he's not arrested by the start of by November 2023. If he's not arrested by then, he's running, and I think he's going to win.
I'm hoping that you're wrong about that.
I'm hoping I'm wrong too, but
Yes.
I mean, we right as it states right now, no, we leaning towards that. And I just went to DC, and they were selling Trump 2024 hats like crazy, right on the lawn by the White House. So it's unfortunate times that we live in, unfortunately.
Yeah, there is some strange times that we live in, right? But I mean, I'm going to enter the fight to preserve our democracy and the right to vote. And the former president wasn't thinking much about our economy, quite frankly, even though he pushed that as part of his agenda. I think he was more concerned about making his friends richer.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
in my district, send me to Congress, I'm going to be working on establishing a more resilient economy, one that will be able to sustain periods of national disasters or periods when we have a pandemic. And so, if history is any indicator, we should have known that a pandemic was nearing. It's happened once every 100 years over the past several hundred years in the history of our country. And so I want us to work on establishing a resilient economy so that we'll be able to withstand situations like we're now going through. And so when I talk about jobs at a living wage, for example, I mean, jobs that with a living wage allows us to have a very resilient economy. Also, I'm going to be fighting for healthcare that's more accessible. And I'm just going to tell you, I'm for healthcare as a basic human right. And so we're not there yet, but I think we're moving in that direction. Matter of fact, there's another candidate in this race who's going around saying that they're the first person who is for Medicare for all. Well, Medicare for all is not a novel concept. Matter of fact, a Democratic congressman from Michigan in 1983, his name was John Conyers. He wrote the first Medicare for all bill. Well, with the assistance of some social workers.
I'm sure. I was only a little pup back then.
Right. But it wasn't. These are not novel concepts, right? And so the Democratic Party has been moving in that direction for a long time. Even though you're hearing other people get the credit for it, it's not really a novel idea. But
why was it never passed? We were talking about 1983. I never heard like it was established in 1983 or tried back then.
For the same reasons that it's having problems now, right? And so, I mean, we're talking about the Green New Deal. That's another thing we're talking about, right? And I am a supporter of the Green New Deal, but there's no teeth to the Green New Deal. It's just a resolution that's passed, right? Because we just don't have the political will to make the tough choices that helps us move forward. And part of that is this incumbency business. right? The same people making the same decisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we know that we need to move away from fossil fuels. We know that. We've known that for a long time. We know that we need to move toward more sustainable energy sources. I mean, for God's sakes, in 1979, Jimmy Carter put solar panels on the White House. But by the time Ronald Reagan came into office, he took them down. Electric cars have been around since the 1950s. They're being introduced into our economy like this is a novel concept. It's not a novel concept. Electric cars have been around for a long time, since the 1950s. We just haven't had the political will to make hard decisions. And so it really does matter. I tell my social work students, law students, it really does matter who you send to make decisions on your behalf. It's important.
Mm-hmm.
It is very important.
No, absolutely, and race is like the race that you're fighting for. It kind of gets like overlooked. People just talk about general elections, and it was like, oh, like running for president or like a mayor or governor race, and even like we only talking about mayors like in high profile cities, like
Yes.
not like a small town. Like you mentioned somebody that's been in power for 30 years, like my mayor in my town has been in the mayor for like 30 years too. Like I move down here, then I get something in the mail, and I see he been the mayor for 30 years. Oh man, that's and all these people moving from Philly and other parts of Jersey and New York, like myself, like we want to see some change and see like the people who've been here forever, like you mentioned, like the status quo, like something needs to
Right.
change that they don't want to change. So it starts with us as like the citizens, like what exactly we want, and we want to see change. We just like kind of in a way sometimes don't know what that change look like, or too afraid to change or
Yeah.
try new things. Like we in the I say it all the time. We in the shoot your shot era. It's just like you got an idea, just do it, and if it pans out, great. If not, hey, I tried something. So why not?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I agree. I mean, the time is now, and it's our time, quite frankly. It's our time. So, and when I say our time, I'm talking about ideas. And so, in the race down here, there was an article in the Herald Sun a couple of days ago, and they talked about the front runners in our race, but they never suggested that the front runners were leading because of their ideas. They were leading because of the amount of money that they raised. And so that really just discourages young people from voting, and it makes other members of our constituency here jaded with regards to the political process. And so I've said from the very beginning with respect to our campaign that, it was important to raise a little money to get our message out.
Of course.
We're running on ideas. We're running on ideas. And so, and I think, people who are in the business of the media are complicit in many ways in promoting these ideas that elections are about money. So.
Yeah, I mean, it is about idea. Yes, you definitely need some money in order to stay like in the race. That you have to put ads out.
Yes.
Between radio, internet. You gotta do commercials on TV. Like you gotta get your message out. Billboards. You gotta get your message out somehow. I've met my politicians, and they in the street, like shaking hands. They outside from New York, like train stations, outside the train stations, like busy hubs and shaking hands and having messages out.
Yeah.
After I moved, like I saw, went to go visit New York a couple times before I moved my dad, and I seen now Mayor Adams in New York. Like he was definitely in the street, like see him on the corner somewhere.
Yeah.
Like he was there talking to people, constituents, getting out his message. So you have to do that, and even that take some money, but that can't be like you said, the only reason, just because you have money or you got a name because you did something. Like what about talk about all the candidates, not just like you got a name. Like who else is running? That's like even like people running for president. There's other people running, like they never get like any shine in it because it's just like the media only focuses on like the
Exactly.
main kind. It was like, and people's like, "Oh, we're picking like the lesser of two evils.
Yeah,
Pretty,
yeah.
pretty much, and
Yeah.
it's been like that, no, for years already. So,
And I don't think that that's healthy for our democracy.
nah, I agree.
I don't. So I'm hoping that we'll return to the days of talking across the aisles about campaign finance reform and sort of making our elections more public. And quite frankly, I think Election Day in and of itself should be a national holiday so that we can all participate in the most important civic exercise that we have in our nation.
No, absolutely. That means I'm used to the kids, kind of being off school. Why just not make like everybody have off and
Yeah,
just go to vote? And it doesn't take, depending where you live at, it doesn't take long now to have early voting, so make things easier. Like get your ballots, mailed to you, fill them out, send them back, or put them in a box, or not have however is convenient, for you. Or like I still like the day of and going and take it, like at least take one of my kids. Like this is like the democratic process of
right,
America as it works, and giving them a teaching lesson like this. No, when you turn 18, like it's like,
right,
this is what we do.
right,
It might look a little different
right,
by the time you're 18, but look, at least this is and we get your little sticker at the end, like I voted, and there you
right,
go. We
right. I
and,
mean,
and that's it. It doesn't take, so it doesn't take that long unless like you're in a highly bad. I seen, we all seen on TV, like people waiting online for hours, and that's going back to like the districts being realigned, or Republicans, making things harder for people to vote. But usually from my experience, I'm like in and out. Sign my name in the book. You mentioned the book before, like sign my
right,
name in the book, go vote, and that's it. I'm out. like
yeah, right, right.
like the most I've done maybe a half hour. That's, and I'm 42, so I've been voting since I turned 18. So it's really is our civic duty to do it. People like yourself who fought for our country, because giving us the right to vote, and we need to maintain that, and we need to fight to make sure our voice gets heard, and is important to vote.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you, as you well know, Moreno, voting is social work.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So
voting is
that's
social
what
work.
we say in social work. Social work is definitely political, and
Right.
I say all the time, we firsthand more than the police and the fire departments. So not knocking them, but we keeping communities afloat,
Yeah, yeah.
and avoiding more disasters than there already is in the world.
And speaking of social work, one of the most progressive eras that we've ever lived in led to the passage of the Social Security Act of 1935. And so,
Which is
although
what,
the Social Security Act of
right?
1935, yeah, that was considered to be a progressive era. Wasn't
Okay,
necessarily it was a new deal, but it was a raw deal in many regards for people of color. But it did establish the Social Security system, and so the Social Security system has gone through many changes and fixes and modifications to allow people of color to have access to it. And quite frankly, the Social Security system is on life support, and nobody
yes,
in my race is talking about that. I have a particular passion about the Social Security system and ensuring that it's available for future generations of North Carolinians. So I'm actually have an interest in serving on the subcommittee, the Ways and Means subcommittee that deals directly with Social Security. But you get your assignments from those who are charged with leadership in the Congress. But that would be something that I'd be interested in if the people here in North Carolina decide that they would like to have me as their elected official.
yeah. I mean, in Social Security, I know it's definitely on life support, and they taught us, at least they taught me in social work school, about ways to maintain Social Security. So why can't, if they teaching that in social work school, why can't it be somehow put into practice, in the real world and in the political world, and try to come up with a solution that, from what I've heard and learned, like it was never meant to be something permanent as a nest egg for people. And unfortunately, we got seniors, living, barely making it. We got
Yeah.
people who are, severely mentally ill, on Social Security, and they're barely, making it. And when Social Security ends, what then?
Yeah. So yeah, and that's what I say to my constituents all the time. They were like, Valentine, why do you keep going around the district and telling people that Social Security is the most successful program in the history of our government? I said, well, just imagine an America without it. How many people would be in poverty? And so it's been successful in keeping older adults out of poverty. I mean, I have 85, 86-year-old parents. And, I'm grateful that they have Social Security to be able to lessen the impact on
Mhm.
aging and not availing yourself to work in the same way you did in your youth. And so I just can't imagine an America without Social Security. And to have my friends on the other side of the aisle always talking about wanting to get rid of it just seems to be crazy to me. But
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. And even
no,
like for people who are married and unfortunately a loved one passes away, and if they got a work history, like your kids get that money until they're
yes,
18. So
yes,
it's like, so I'm living proof of that. So I'm grateful for Social Security. No myself. Like,
yeah,
with my dad and stuff that I get, financially for my kids, and I'm using that money to, invest in some stocks, and saving for using that money to save for college for them. So it is working out for me.
yeah. I mean, the social safety net is a wonderful invent, one that I think society has benefited from. So I'll be fighting for it, Moreno.
Okay, so remind the listeners again. So the primary is when? The
The
Democratic primary.
primary, yes. So the primary is on May 17th, but the early voting actually starts a week from today. So on 28th of April here in the 4th Congressional District in North Carolina, people are going to start going to the polls for the very first time. Yes, and I think, like I said, the stakes here are very high.
Yes, is political world in North Carolina has been a battleground state for
Yes.
last several years. So it's only continuing what's been happening recently. And I know you mentioned about doing stuff, preventive stuff, like we could have possibly prevented a pandemic, done something. I know President Obama was trying to do something while he was in office to try, like he knew something was coming, and his administration was trying to do stuff beforehand. And I know certain sections of North Carolina, they usually get hit with this hurricane season is fast approaching.
Yes.
So what are stuff, if you're elected, could be doing in terms of natural disasters, like you mentioned earlier, for
So yes, so the context for the pandemic and the natural disasters is creating a resilient economy. And so, I mean, all of the things that I have already talked about regarding healthcare, regarding jobs at a living wage, expanding educational opportunities, like all of these sort of things that I'm promoting as part of my campaign go into establishing a resilient economy. Like, give you another example, universal preschool. If we allow parents to lessen their burden on the costs associated with raising their children very young, that
Mhm.
helps to make our economy more resilient. That money can go to other parts of the economy, right?
Right.
Whether it's savings or whether it's being able to have more purchasing power in the market. But universal preschool is something definitely that I'll be pushing for, and is part of that resilient economy. Also, this movement for free community college, I'm for that. Um, I I know that for every dollar that you put into education of our young people, that it comes back as $4 in our national treasury. And so that helps with regards to establishing a resilient economy. We just have to continue on the front end, reinforce things that make our economy stronger so that it can remain resilient during times when there's national disasters, which we can't prevent in many regards, right? We can only prepare ourselves for them. And so funding FEMA at an acceptable level, and to ensure that the coastline here in North Carolina and some of the more inland counties are not devastated, because it seems like every time there's a national disaster, these counties are devastated, and it takes years to recover from these things. And so I think having a ready FEMA, as part of that resilient economy is something that we definitely need to take a look at.
No, absolutely, and I'm glad FEMA has really stepped up. I think, because their work can get better. Of course, anything can get better, but
Yes.
I think they've learned from the disaster of Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, and they did a good. I think the government did a good job of. I know the program came out for people who lost loved ones and giving people some money back for funeral expenses. I think that that's really helped people a lot. That I was one of those fortunate people that got some money back from FEMA after my mom passed. So that program definitely helped, and I think natural disasters, and we see more and more of that, and I think they're headed in the right direction, and hopefully the government continues to fund programs like FEMA. We definitely need more funding in terms of Medicaid and Medicare, because we still have outpatient clinics that need those funds to stay in business. We need those funds to help our opiate crisis that we in, and drugs and alcohol as a whole, addiction as a whole, need that funding. So I'm hoping the government does its part in helps the people. But we got to vote.
Yeah, you have to vote, right? You have to vote, and I think that some people, when they go to the polls, they vote against their interests in many regards, because they're not sort of paying attention to the issues that impact their lives, and they're more concerned with the so-called culture wars that are really not things that impact your life on a daily basis. And so, I mean, I think people really need to take a good look at what the issues are and how those issues impact on their own life when they go to the polls to vote.
How can people find you?
Oh man, what a great question. So you can find me and learn more about our campaign at www.stephenjvalentineforcongress.com. And Stephen is actually spelled with a PH. And so I invite you to learn more about my campaign. And if you'd like to give a small donation, I promise I won't say no.
Mr. Valentine, best wishes on the campaign trail. Good luck on the election. And if anything I could do from my end, by all means, let me know.
All right. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
All right, have a good one.
It's been a pleasure ranting with you.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much.